Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First of all, I'd like to apologize to everyone, sincere apology for being late. And also, I know there was some mishap in the US regarding timing. But alhamdulillah, we're here now. This is a unique opportunity for us to hear one of the leading scholars in the world, Fadilatul Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah, and also one of the most influential Islamic scholars in the West, Shaykh Hamza Yusuf. And this opportunity is hosted by Imams Online. I am senior editor of Imams Online, Qari Muhammad Asim. And Imams Online is about amplifying the voices of Imams across the country. And it is a kind of little miracle we were talking about earlier, that how we have Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah in the Maghrib, and then Shaykh Hamza Yusuf in California, and then myself in the UK. And we all coming together to listen to the words of wisdom from Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah, who's known as Shaykh al-Fattah, the one who has the ability to present the complicated issues into a very easily accessible language. And as we are currently facing an unprecedented challenge globally, unprecedented time filled with unprecedented challenges, we are really honored to have the scholar of the scholars, who's also the president of the Forum for Promoting Peace in Muslim societies, but also recently launched the Alliance of Virtues, a statement signed by religious leaders of various traditions, showing support to each other, but also saying that we are all together in tackling and defeating coronavirus. Alhamdulillah, the Shaykh does not need any introduction. I've met Shaykh, I had the honor of meeting the Shaykh many times, and what I'm really struck by is the humility, despite the inspiration that he brings to the room. The humility is overwhelming, and that is a true sign of a great scholar of Islam. And then Shaykh Hamza Yusuf doesn't need any introduction, alhamdulillah. It's very interesting. I was thinking earlier that when we had 7/7 in the UK, and it was very difficult, extremely challenging time for British Muslims, Shaykh Hamza Yusuf came to the UK to talk to British Muslims, to inspire them and help them to be firm on the straight path, Islam. The co-founder and president of Zaytunia College in California, and also the mentee and disciple of Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah. So we'd like to start with Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah regarding how do we tackle the current coronavirus, especially Ramadan in the lockdown. So, فضيلة الشيخ شيخ عبد الله بن بيّة تفضل. فضيلة الشيخ تفضل.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
حياكم الله أستاذ قاري حاصل.
لا تنسينا في الدعاء شيخ.
بارك الله فيك. والسلام عليكم أخي وحبيبي شيخ حمزة، حفظك الله. دكتور حمزة.
السلام، الله يبارك فيك شيخ.
لكن لا تزيدك هذه الدال. الحمد لله.
الله يبارك فيك.
الله يحفظك. بمناسبة الشهر، أول شيء نقول الحمد لله رب العالمين، ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم صل عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. ثم بعد ذلك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله، نسأل الله لنا ولكم التوفيق، ونهنئكم بمقدم هذا الشهر المبارك الذي كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فيه يهنئ أصحابه فيقول أتاكم شهر رمضان شهر مبارك فرض الله عز وجل عليكم صيامه تفتح فيه أبواب السماء وتغلق فيه أبواب الجحيم وتغل فيه مردة الشياطين لله فيه ليلة خير من ألف شهر من حرم خيرها فقد حرم. الحديث أخرجه النسائي وأحمد في مسنده وغيرهما. بعد هذه التهنئة التي هي تهنئة لجميع المسلمين، نقول إن شهر رمضان في هذه السنة جاء في وضع غير مسبوق، نشهد فيه أزمة عالمية كبيرة، وهي أزمة تؤثر في وجوب العبادات وفي كيفية أدائها أيضا. ولأجل ذلك ربما يكون من المناسب أن يكون حديثنا عن الرخص. لقد أثرت هذه الأزمة التي تسمى بكورونا في العبادات. بالأمس كان الكلام عن الصلاة وعن الاجتماع للصلاة وعن الجماعات والجمع، فرخص العلماء بأن تؤدى الصلاة في البيوت، وأن تؤدى الصلاة أن يؤديها الناس فرادى وليسوا في جماعة، وكذلك أن تؤدى الجمعات في البيوت، لكنها تؤدى ظهرا وليس بكيفية الجمعة المعهودة، لا خطبة فيها ولا إتمام للصلاة ولا قصر للصلاة، لا تقصر الصلاة على ركعتين، وإنما هي صلاة تامة ظهر تام. اليوم يحل رمضان ومعه هذا الوضع الذي لم ينقشع بعد، لم تخلع هذه الأزمة لباسها ولم تنقشع غيمتها السوداء، ولم ينكشف ضبابها، ما زالت جاثمة على البشرية. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يكشفها وأن يكشف العذاب. فلها أحكامها فيما يتعلق بالصيام، وفيما يتعلق بالتراويح، وفيما يتعلق بالعيد، فيما يتعلق بالعادات أيضا، بعادات التجمع عند الإفطار والتجمع عند السحور، كل ذلك يتأثر اليوم. فعلينا أن نبحث للناس عن أيسر السبل وأسهلها وأفضل المسالك وأنبلها، فديننا يسر وسبيله سهل. ولعلكم جميعا تعرفون أن مع العزيمة رخصة، فالرخص في مقام الشدة والضيق أمر معروف. أجمله الشافعي رحمه الله تعالى في قوله: الأمر إذا ضاق اتسع. وفي القواعد الفقهية: المشقة تجلب التيسير. استنباطا من نصوص الكتاب والسنة: إن مع العسر يسرا، إن مع العسر يسرا، وما جعل عليكم في الدين يسروا ولا تعسروا، إن الله يحب أن تؤتى رخصه كما يحب أن تؤتى عزائمه. هو حديث رواه أحمد بن حبان وابن خزيمة والبيهقي. شيخ حمزة أتوقف لك.
نعم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد. Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah, hafidhahullah, he said, first of all, just greetings of peace to everybody after prayers and peace upon the Prophet ﷺ, and beginning in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he greeted Qari Asim and also the Imams who have supported this Imam on lines. And then just again reiterating prayers and peace on the Prophet ﷺ. And then congratulating all of you on the coming of Ramadan. And the Shaykh said that it was a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that he would congratulate his companions when the month came, and he would remind them that this is a month in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has opened up the gates of heaven and closed the gates of hell, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also locked up those shayateen and also the rebellious jinn during this time, that they have they're shackled during this time, so much more limited than what's normal. And he also said that the Prophet ﷺ, in a hadith that Imam An-Nasa'i and others, Imam Ahmad related, that when he greeted them, he reminded them that this was a month that had a night in it that was worth 1,000 nights of worship, which is a great blessing to this ummah. But he said also there's a cloud over the Muslims in the coming of Ramadan, which is this coronavirus, and this is a calamitous event that due to the critical nature of it, it's actually affected the very nature of the obligation of some of our devotional practices, and also the way in which we actually perform them. And so the Shaykh said that it's probably, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in, that it would seem appropriate to talk about the nature in what the usuli scholars, the scholars of usul al-fiqh, call rukhas, which the rukhas are the licenses or the dispensations that are allowed in certain times. And so he said that the coronavirus, this COVID-19, has really necessitated that the scholars look at the rukhas, or these licenses in this situation. And he said just yesterday with some of the muftis, they had concluded that it's now people should not be congregating for prayer, and they should also, this is affecting the Jum'ah, so they should not do their Jum'ah. And he said that the rukhsa then is that people should say their prayers in their homes, and actually in the adhans they're telling people to pray in their homes, and this is also a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to do that when there's difficulties. And he said that you still pray Jum'ah because that's the nature of Friday, but the Jum'ah in this case is prayed as a normal dhuhr, but you'll get the reward with that intention of what would normally be that. So he said that you do not shorten the prayer, there's no khutbah, and you pray the Jum'ah prayer, the fard of Jum'ah, you pray it as dhuhr in your home and complete that. He said that, we're going to be fasting, the month is upon us, and that while Corona can't change the nature of the month and the spiritual reality of the month, undeniably, it's really it's dampened the conditions for the Muslims and cast this dark cloud, not just over the Muslims, but over the whole world. And the Shaykh asked that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would remove it. And he said that the coronavirus is going to affect the nature of the month for us. One of the most beautiful aspects of the month of Ramadan is the Taraweeh Prayers, where Muslims congregate in the mosques and pray Taraweeh. And he said this is not, people are going to pray in their homes. And even the Eid and the Eid prayer will be affected. And also suhoor and iftar, where traditionally Muslims very often invite other people and they congregate. So these aspects of Ramadan are going to be affected. And this is where we have to understand the nature of the rukhsa, because in these situations, every ruling in Islam has an azima, and then it has a rukhsa. So the azima is taking the strongest position and fulfilling it based on that. But the rukhsa is used when difficulties arise. And Imam Shafi'i radiallahu anhu said in a famous principle that's used by the fuqaha, that if any situation, al-amru idha daqat tasa', if any situation becomes constricted, then by the very nature of that constriction, it has to be expanded, and so it's expanded through the rukhsa, or through the license. And also there's a very important qaida in our tradition that says al-mashaqqatu tajlib at-taysir, which is that difficulties demand or necessitate facilitation. So whenever there's a great difficulty, that it demands that the fuqaha look to how they can make ease for the people. The Quran reminds us in the al-usri yusra, that surely with hardship is ease. It's reiterated twice. The Quran also says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants ease for you and doesn't want hardship. So it's very important that we remember these things. Also, Imam Ahmad and others relate a hadith that Allah actually loves for his servant to take the rukhas, the licenses, over the difficulties. So this is something that it's in the mercy of Allah that he enables things to happen. He did not, the Quran says that he didn't put any hardship, haraj, in this religion for you. So it's important that we keep these in mind, and these are the times when these very principles are meant to be implemented.
طبعا السلام عليكم مرة أخرى.
عليكم السلام.
نتحدث عنه الآن هو الترخص في ترك الصيام لمرضى الكورونا. كثير من الناس يسألون عن مرضى الكورونا، هل هم مرضى أو الكوفيد؟ يعني هذا زائر الذي سماه الناس باسمه، يعني قالوا سموه، هل هو سمى به نفسه؟ سماه بكوفيد 19. على كل حال الله أعلم باسمه وبحالته وبكيفية انتهائه. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن ينزل أن يعلم الناس الدواء، لأنه ما أنزل داء إلا أنزل معه دواء، وهذا يجعلنا نتفاعل ونبحث علميا. لكن أنا أعتقد أنكم جميعا تهتمون بالمرضى هؤلاء، هل هم مرضى يفطرون أو لا يفطرون. الذي نذهب إليه في هذا الزمن بأن من ظهرت عليه أعراض الكورونا وهو مريض يدخل في قوله تعالى: فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخرى. حقيقة المرض قائمة فيه. وهذا مهم جدا. وكان بعض علماء السلف كالبخاري ومحمد بن سيرين وعطاء كما ذكره البخاري وإسحاق بن راهويه أيضا كما يبدو من كلام البخاري وربيعة بن أبي عبد الرحمن كما يبدو من كلام مالك رحمه الله تعالى. كل هؤلاء كانوا يعتبرون مجرد المرض موجبا للإفطار، لأنه يجيز للإفطار، فلا يسألون عن شدته أو خفته، بل المرض الخفيف عندهم يجيز الإفطار. لماذا قلنا ذلك؟ قلنا ذلك إن هذا المرض مآلاته شديدة، وبالتالي الخفيف منه قد يؤدي إلى الكبير وقد يؤدي إلى الهلاك. ولهذا اعتمدنا في فتوانا هذه على ما ذكرته من علماء السلف، أي مجرد المرض، أي مجرد ظهور العلامات الأولى من هذا المرض كافية في جواز الصوم، في جواز الإفطار. فإن أخبر الطبيب بأنه بالصوم سيتفاقم المرض إلى أن يحصل منه هلاك أو شديد أذى، حينئذ يكون الفطر واجبا وليس جائزا، ينتقل من الجواز إلى الوجوب، حتى لا يقتل نفسه ولا تقتلوا أنفسكم إن الله كان بكم رحيما. كذلك فإن الشيخ الكبير الهرم يشق عليه الصيام، فإنه يكتفي بالإطعام في هذه المرحلة. كبار السن الذين يشق عليهم الصوم يكتفون بالإطعام. أما التراويح فيجوز لكل أو يستحب لكل شخص أن يصليها في بيته ليؤم أفراد عائلته بما معه من القرآن إذا كان يحفظ شيئا من القرآن الكريم. أما الأصحاء فإن وجوب الصوم عليهم بينه الله ولا بيان بعد بيانه، كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبل. الأصحاء هؤلاء يصومون، لا يعتذرون بأنه يوجد مرض، المرض إذا لم ينزل بهم فهم أصحاء، وإذا لم يكن لديهم مرض آخر ولا كبر سن معه مشقته، هذه أمور يحتاج الناس إلى بيانه. تراويح تصلى في البيوت، تراويح صلاتها جماعة سنة، وبخاصة عند أبي حنيفة فهي عنده سنة مؤكدة. المالكية مستحبة، يعني التراويح في المساجد، لكن في البيوت أفضل إذا لم تعطل المساجد عند مالك، لأن عمر قال والتي ينامون عنها خير وأفضل، ينامون عنها. اعتبرها المالكية التي رواها مالك في الموطأ اعتبروا أن معناها التي ينامونها عنها ويصلونها في بيوتهم، واعتبرها غيرهم كالحنفية التي ينامون عنها، أي أن التراويح جماعة ينبغي أن تصلى في الجزء الأخير من الليل. يعني هذه تفسيرات العلماء. لكن الآن الإنسان ليس مخيرا، لأنه يعيش في الحجر الصحي، فعليه أن يصلي في بيته، لأن الضرورة تقتضي ذلك، حتى مشكلة العدوى. فعلى المسلمين أن يتفهموا في هذه الأمور، وعليهم أن لا تحملهم العاطفة، وهي عاطفة دينية التي لا نتهمها، لا نتهم عواطفهم الدينية الحسنة، لكن فقط على هذه العواطف أن نزنها تكون موزونة بالشرع، في حدود الشرع. الشيء الآخر هو أن الناس عليهم أن يكثروا من الدعاء والتضرع في شهر رمضان، وبخاصة في ليلة القدر، أن يرفع الله هذا الوباء، وأن يرحمنا ويرحم أهل الأرض. والشيء الثالث هو أن لا يتهم الناس الأقدار، مقادير. فالمقادير في أصلها خير، والإنسان محدود الرؤية، محدود القدرة على فهم الظواهر الكبرى التي تتجاوز حدود الإنسان. الإنسان يعرف الخير والشر في حدوده، لكن لا يعرف كيف يعرف الخير والشر، وقد تكون صورة الخير والشر واحدة، يعرفهما بالدوافع وبالمآلات. أضرب لكم مثلا بسيطا. هذا رجل يحرق الحشائش في بستان، قد يكون لصا يحرق الحرث، يهلك الحرث والنسل، وقد يكون صاحب البستان يقوم على بستانه فيحرق ما يضر منه. الصورة واحدة، لكن الدوافع، البواعث ليست واحدة، والمآلات ليست واحدة. هذا على مستوى الإنسان، صورة واحدة، لكن الخير يتعرف فيها من خلال الباعث ومن خلال المآلات. هذا في فضاء الإنسان. أما في الفضاء الرباني فالخير والشر والسبب والمآلات هذه كونية للكون كله، الجو والبر والبحر، فقط لا يتهم الإنسان مقادير الله سبحانه وتعالى. هكذا بسرعة أعطيتكم مثالا واحدا، والأمثلة كثيرة. السلام عليكم، جزاكم الله خيرا.
So, Shaykh said that, so to reiterate that we're looking at the rukhas in the time of Corona, and he says it's important to remember that, you know, these things come and go, this will dissipate. They've called it Corona, they've called it COVID-19, they give these names. did it name itself? It didn't name itself. These are names that humans have given it, but Allah knows its real name because everything has a name. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that he didn't send down any disease, except he also sent down a cure for it. And this is why humans have to look for the cure. So given that people get sick from this, an important question is, what's the ruling of the fasting on people who are sick? The Quran says that whoever is sick or on a journey, then they can take other days to fast. They don't have to fast during that time. And the opinion of Imam al-Bukhari and Muhammad bin Sirin and Ata and Ibn Rawaheh and others of the great ulama, and this was particularly Imam al-Bukhari who mentions some of these other opinions, said that simply being sick was enough to permit the breaking of the fast. And he said that that you didn't even have to ask whether it was a severe sickness or a light sickness, that simply being sick gives a permission to break the fast. And so we would say that, people should not be asked about that. If they're sick, unwell, then they are permitted to break their fast. But if a doctor says that by fasting, that person will, the symptoms will become more severe, then in that case, it's no longer a question of permissibility. That patient is obliged to break his fast, because it's not permitted to harm yourself, and it's not permitted to expose yourself to destruction. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not destroy yourselves at your own hands, because, and in another verse Allah says, don't kill yourselves, Allah is merciful with you. And so because of that, it's very important for people, because this disease is a disease that indeed can have fatal consequences for people. So if a doctor tells them that they can't fast, then they have to listen to that. It becomes an obligation. In terms of old people who are particularly susceptible to this illness and the dangerous aspects of it, old people are permitted, older people are permitted to feed in place of the fasting. So if somebody is elderly, then that again is a permissibility for them to do that. And in terms of Taraweeh prayer, Taraweeh is some of the Imams, Abu Hanifa in particular, is very strong about the sunnah inside the masjid, in the congregation, as a sunnah mu'akkada, that the Muslims should come together and congregate in the masajid and pray. And in the Hanafi countries, it's a very strong sunnah. The Shaykh said that in the Maliki madhab, it's actually preferred to pray in your home, and the man should lead his family in prayer, especially if he memorizes the Quran or parts of the Quran. That it's actually better as long as there's a group fulfilling the sunnah kifaya in the masjid. So if they fulfill the sunnah in the masjid, then it's actually better to pray in homes. And then Umar radiallahu anhu in the hadith of Muwatta about not sleeping on it, he said there was some difference of opinion about what he meant by that. Was it the later prayer of the night or not? And so the point is that it's not only perfectly valid to pray the Taraweeh in your home, it's actually, that is the preferred opinion of one of the great Imams of our tradition. And so people shouldn't feel like they're missing something out in that. It's actually a very good thing to do. And then as for people who are well, the Shaykh said that it's still an obligation to fast Ramadan. شيخ ممكن أسألك عن، لأن أنا سألت عن هذا الشيء بالنسبة للأطباء الذين هم يعالجون المرضى بكوفيد، لأن قلت أنه من الواجب الصحة أنهم يصومون، لكن بالنسبة للأطباء إذا هم يحسون أنهم يحتاجون إلى تقوية أو قوت حتى ما يضعف أثناء المعالجة خوفا من هذا المرض، هل يبيح لهم الإفطار؟
هذو الأطباء طواقم الطبية الأطباء والممرضين والمسعفين هذو إذا كانوا بالصوم يخافون من أن يمرضوا، من أن تضعف مناعتهم، أو كانوا يخافون أن يضعفوا عن معالجة مرضاهم، هؤلاء يمكن أن يفطروا، أن يترخصوا. وقد نص الحنفية على أن الممرض، وأصل الكلام ذكره الطحطاوي في حاشيته على الدر المختار، إذا الممرض وإن كان ابن عابدين قال لأنه يعولهم، لكن كذلك إذا خاف تضييعهم فيجوز له أن يفطر في يوم عمله، حتى أكون واضحا في هذا.
نعم.
يعني يخاف أن يضيع المرضى، أن يضعف عن معالجة مرضاه كالأطباء في زمن كورونا الشديد.
نعم.
أو يخاف هو أيضا من أنه ستضعف مناعته ويسهل أن يصاب.
نعم.
هذا كل واحد منهم يكفي.
نعم.
يعني ظهر لنا من خلال تتبع في كلام كثير المالكية عن مسألة الخوف من المرض، أو الخوف من أو الخوف أن يكون سببا للمرض.
نعم.
وفي كلام أيضا للحنابلة، فهذا الكلام من حاصله هو ما ذكرته لك.
So, I was just saying, the Sheikh mentioned that healthy people should be fasting, and what would be the condition of a physician or a nurse or somebody working in the healthcare field that was worried about having weaker immunity if they were fasting? Is it permissible for them in that situation to break their fast? And Shaykh Abdallah said that there's two situations. One is if they were not, if they didn't have enough energy to actually fulfill their duties, so they weren't. And he said that this is actually mentioned in the Hashia of Imam Tahtawi on Durr al-Mukhtar in the Hanafi madhab, that it is permitted in that situation to break the fast, but only on the day that they're actually working. It wouldn't be on the other days. And so the same is true if the doctor felt, or the nurse, that they were going to be in a compromised situation dealing with these, they could break their fast and fast later. And that would be determined obviously by the doctor's own medical judgment on that. So he said then also, that, and the reason for the obligation is clear because there's no clarification after God's clarification. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that the fasting has been prescribed for you, that it's an obligation. Kutiba alaykum as-siyam, and kutiba here means it's an obligation for you to fulfill it. And then he said that people should not allow for their religious emotions to dictate their actions. And he said that he's not faulting them for those emotions, because those emotions come out of their religiosity and very often out of their piety. And so they're not negative instincts. But he said we really can't allow our religious emotions to override the reasonableness of our religion. And so that's very important, that we should be following the guidelines of the experts. This is the religious tradition. This is our tradition. So government and the epidemiologists, the guidelines that they set forth very important to follow. And finally, Shaykh said that it's very important to make dua, that it's extremely important that people make dua, because Ramadan, the gates of heaven are open. Dua is one of the times when dua is particularly effective. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove this tribulation on humanity, not just for the Muslims, but for all of humanity, because we're an ummah for all of humanity. And he said that especially on the night of power, this is a very important night for dua. And finally, Shaykh said it's extremely important that people not do this, do not suspect the decree of God or judge the decree of God. Don't think that you can understand what's behind all of these things, that the human perspective is limited, that we have a certain limitation on our view. Even when we look out, we can only see what's in front of us. We don't see what's behind us. So we don't have this ability to see the whole picture. And because of that, like just in the case of right and wrong, Allah has given us a normative understanding of right and wrong, so we can determine based on things, but we can't penetrate the right and wrongness of circumstances. The only thing that can determine that is the consequences of those situations. And so something can actually look like it's a horrible thing, but in the end, you realize, oh, that actually there was a great reason for that. And he said you can give many examples of this, but the most obvious examples are things that outwardly appear. You can have the exact same situation where one person burns down a piece of land in order to prepare it for, to make it more fertile and prepare it for growth, and another person burns it down as a destructive act. So in the very same act, if you just looked at those two acts, they would be identical, but one is for good and the other is for evil. And the same is true, like a surgeon can cut off a hand to save a life from gangrene, whereas another person can cut off the hand in an act of aggression. So it's the exact same form, but two completely different meanings based on the intentions behind it. And only God knows these things. We just don't know these things. And so we have to trust in our benevolent and merciful Lord that what he's doing is for the good of humanity and not to harm us, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants good for us. And so it's very important not to do that.
لا نقلل من الآلام، من آلام الناس، ولكن كالمثال الذي أعطيت الذي يقطع أيدي، وهناك مثال جراح الذي يجرح القلب، أو الشخص المعتدي الذي يعتدي على واحد ويجرحه بسكين. لكن أيضا نحن عندنا البعد الآخر وهو بعد الآخرة. فالناس الذين يموتون قد يكونون في الدار الأخرى في وضع طيب، فهذا أيضا البعد الأخروي هو مهم جدا في فهم هذه الأمور. وأنت سيدي شيخ حمزة عندك كتاب الماعون في فضل الطاعون، فأنت تعرف البعد الأخروي في مثل هذه الأمور. كثير من الناس لا يهتمون بأن الناس قد يموتون لخير، قد يذهبون إلى خير، وقد يجنبون أتراح الحياة. هذه كلمة فقط عن المقادير التي يتكلم عنها الناس. فالله سبحانه وتعالى لا يحاكم على قوانين المخلوقات، خالق لا يحاكم على قوانين المخلوقات.
نعم.
فلعلي الوقت هنا عندنا تأخر، الوقت عندك أنت ما زال في الصباح، فأنت الحمد لله في وضع إن شاء الله طيب، ونحن جميعا في وضع طيب.
الله يبارك فيك شيخ.
بالنسبة للوقت تأخر، فإذا كنتم تسمحون لي بالانسحاب إذا لم تكن فيها أسئلة ملحة، وقد ترسل لي الأسئلة إن شاء الله وأنا أجيب.
أكرمك
الله. حفظكم الله وحفظ الجميع والمسلمين وأهل الأرض. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah. So Shaykh was just saying that finally the last dimension that people often, especially in the materialistic world that we're in, people often miss that the other dimension of these events. And so people die, but very often somebody could be in great immunocompromised conditions or very sick and suffering a lot. And this actually becomes a great blessing for them when they leave the world and go to a much better condition. So again, we can't judge things, especially with the otherworldly dimension. The Shaykh mentioned a book that Ibn Hajar wrote called "Help During the Time of Plague," and in that book he mentions the virtues that come out of plagues and pestilences and these things that afflict human beings. And one of the hadiths that he mentions in there is that while the plague might be sometimes involve great harm, the Prophet ﷺ said for somebody who believes in God and trusts in God, the plague is actually a mercy for them, epidemics and things like that. And then finally he just said that you cannot, God is not asked about what he does, لا يحاكم في قوانين المخلوقات, that he can't be taken to account or to court. He's the judge of judges, and so we can't question the way that the universe and its laws that are working in it, that have been set up by God. We can't question why they are the way they are, other than that we trust that God has described himself as merciful and benevolent, and we trust in God that what he does for his creation.
Jazakallah.
Shaykh also said that it's late where he is, and as it's morning where I am, and it's early evening where Qari Asim is. So he apologized, but he said if you do have questions, you can write them, submit them, and he'll get to them later. So he just says thank you and just salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam, Shaykh.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. We are most grateful for your wisdom.
Oh, yeah. So Qari Asim.
Jazakallah khair to Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah for his wisdom, helping us to navigate through some of the questions that COVID-19 has presented. For instance, can we pray Jummah at home? How do we perform Taraweeh Prayer? And how is Ramadan going to be during this pandemic? And as I mentioned, that Shaykh often focuses on the merciful aspect of our faith, which is often missed by many those in positions of leadership. So alhamdulillah, Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, just wanted to ask you a question in terms of some people feel really down, and it's emotionally challenging, frustrating for others to say that there is no mosque this Ramadan. How am I going to fulfill my obligations? What advice would you give to anyone who has such thoughts, whether thinking that their Ramadan has been ruined due to COVID-19 pandemic?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Well, first of all, I would say that our religion is a religion that has a very interesting balance between the individual and between the community. in the West, individuality has been taken to a very, very extreme aspect of society, where the individual overrides the community. And so we see things that are very offensive to segments, sometimes large segments of the community, but because some of the people in the society want to do those things, everybody has to suffer that. Certainly pornography is a good example of that, or the type of advertisements and things that one sees just going out into the public. In the Muslim tradition, there's a great sense of respecting the community and the sensibilities of the community, but what you do in your own home is your own business. That's between you and God. Now, the other aspect, though, is that Riyā is a very serious sin in our tradition. It's called the hidden shirk, and this is why things like night prayers, and there are things that you do that other people don't know, and that is a way of protecting yourself from doing them for other people. So this is actually an opportunity to do things on your own that other people won't see. And Taraweeh, and this is why the Malikis consider it better in the home. That's one of the reasons that they consider it better in the home, is because it's between you and God, and there's nobody that sees you. And those are the acts that Allah loves the best, where it's just solely done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the other thing that, you know, the intimacy, one of the things that a lot of modern people have a very difficult time understanding is just the intimacy with God and with the Quran. The Salaf said that the Quran to the early community, to the Sahaba, it was like love letters that their Lord had sent them, and so they would read them at night over and over again. You know, like people when maybe some of the people out there, when they were young and in love, and they wrote poems or they wrote love letters to their beloved, they would read them over and over again. And that's something out of intimacy. Intimacy is not for public display, and which is one of the reasons why in our tradition, idhar khushu' is makruh in the prayer, like to show too much khushu' when you're praying in public. That's actually makruh for that reason. So I think it's an opportunity for people to just be with their Lord. In many previous traditions, people fled to desert caves and things like that. I mean, the Hindus have the sadhu who goes off into the jungle just to get away from society, to get close to God. And the Christians had the anchorites. We have also, Awais al-Qarni is a very interesting character in our tradition, and Awais was one of these people. They said that he used to throw rocks if they tried to visit him in his cave, because he just didn't want to be bothered. So I think it's important for people to remember that there is that component of just being alone with your Lord and getting more comfortable with that. Obviously, that's easier for introverted people than it is for extroverted people. I'm an ambivert, so I have that ability to do both. Extroverted people tend to really need other people, and they thrive off other people's energy. And that is a fact of life. So there really are genuinely extroverted people that really need more communication and sociability, and that's understandable. And those people, it's far more difficult. Like, I have a friend, he's a very prominent Christian scholar and a legal scholar, and he was telling me what a hard time he's having because he's such an extrovert. Whereas for me, this has been like such a blessing of just having a lot of time. So it's a very interesting thing. So I would just recommend that people really try to do things that connect them more, especially the Quran, reading the Quran. If you don't know Arabic, getting a good translation and really being able to connect with the Quran Ramadan is for the Quran. And then a really important thing is just exercise. Like people have to physically exercise, because one of the main reasons why there's so much mental illness and depression is because people do not move their bodies, and we believe in the bodily resurrection. So our prayer is a physical prayer. There's actually, I mean, we don't want to say this, but there is an exercise component to our physical prayer. Like you're really doing something that is very healthy for your body by praying 5 times a day in the way that we pray. So obviously that's not the purpose, but that's a side benefit of the prayer. Getting up throughout the day is very important. But so I would say people should walk. We're still allowed to walk outside to exercise. Walking is really important, especially if you live near green places, to get out. The Japanese have a word for what they call forest bathing, which is actually to go out into nature and to take like a spiritual bath. And the Quran, when it describes the servants of the merciful, it says وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. And also the Prophet said بَشَّرْ الْمَشَّائِينَ بِالظُّلَمِ, you know, بِالنُّورِ التَّامِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Like, tell the people that walk often in the darknesses to having complete light on the day of judgment. So walking devotionally is actually very important. And there are certain shuyukh that, like in Mauritania, a lot of the shuyukh do all their dhikr walking. So they actually go and just recite Quran when they're walking. It's interesting that in Buddhism they have sitting meditation, they have walking meditation. They say that the sitting meditation is for people like to sit, and walking meditation is for people like to walk. So you can take a subha or just go out and just walk and do some dhikr and still your mind and calm your soul. Those are very beneficial things for people to do. And you know, the human body is designed to at least walk between 8,000 and 12,000 steps a day. And it will work optimally if you do that. Most people are walking under 3,000 steps a day now in Western society. And the mortality rate goes down 51% by people that walk over 8,000 steps a day, with all diseases like cancer, everything. So there have been really amazing studies about the importance of walking. And so I would really encourage that. And one of my teachers, Murabit Muhammad al-Amin, once told me that there's an Arab proverb, al-harwalatu dawa'un la yuqti, that a brisk walking is a cure that will never fail. Mm-hmm. And when he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, they wanted to put him on medication. He said, no, I'm just gonna walk every day more than I usually do. And he did, and his sugar regulated. So walking is very, very beneficial, and people need to do that. It's very important.
Shaykh Hamza, you mentioned that how the time of coronavirus can be considered as
your voice went out.
Sounds, but also
your voice went out. I tried to read your lips, but I wasn't getting everything. So could you just repeat that? Sorry.
So Shaykh Hamza, you mentioned how we can use this as an opportunity to spiritually fulfill ourselves, but also to become mentally resilient. And I just wanted to bring another issue to your attention. We as imams in the UK are receiving lots of calls from sisters who are saying that now husbands are staying at home and there are issues at home because perhaps couples haven't had the opportunity to live together, and coronavirus has forced people to live together, and that's resulting in domestic abuse, emotional stress, and as well as perhaps on occasions I have had to deal with like talaq issues as well. Now, where would you go when you are actually confined to your home? So what advice would you give to the Muslim community regarding, you know, not just in respect of this period, but overall?
Sure. I mean, first of all, domestic violence is haram in Islam. To beat a woman is haram. The verse in Surah An-Nisa, verse 34, that the verse in there is very clear in the commentaries. It's very clear that has nothing to do with violence. That any physical act of violence against a woman, or don't forget, women actually are also abusive. About close to 30% of all domestic violence in America is women actually against men. So men are also abused physically, and a lot of men, and I'm one of them, you know, because I've never hit a woman, and like I grew up learning that you do not hit women, and so there are men who actually will be their wife or their spouse or whoever will get violent with them, and they won't fight back. And ER doctors know this because they've seen men who come to ER with boiling water had been poured on them when they were sleeping or something like that because of some of these domestic disputes. So it's not just the women, but the majority, undeniably, the majority of you know, around 66% in the US, I don't know what the stats are in UK, are women. So the majority of victims of domestic violence are women. And unfortunately, even murders that are spousal, they're usually perpetrated the man against the woman. So this is a human problem. It's been a problem for a very, very long time. What people should fear God and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is over them. And even in the verse in Surah An-Nisa, it reminds people that Allah is over them immediately after that, for that very reason. So, you know, I just, no woman should feel insecure in her home. No woman should have that feeling. The house in Arabic, the word in Arabic is maskan, which is the place of sakina. And the Quran, when it talks about in Surah Ar-Rum, when it talks about the reason why God created the man and the woman, one of the reasons was litaskunu ilayha, that you find tranquility in your spouse. And so there should be sakina in the home. And if there's not, that home is not practicing the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know that the Prophet never raised his hand to hit a woman, a child, or a servant. And that's in the hadith. So the sunnah of the Prophet is never to raise his hand against a woman, a child, or a servant. And if you're doing that, you're not following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So I would just remind people of that. I mean, one of the interesting verses in the Quran in Surah Maryam, you know, where Mary, when the Annunciation happens and she sees the angels, she seeks refuge in Allah, and then she says, in kunta taqiyya, you know, if you have taqwa. I mean, when you're in a situation like, it's, if the person has an ounce of piety in their heart and that woman reminds them, that should be something that stops them from doing that. But women have a right to be safe and secure in their homes. And I would just add to this, and this is a very important component, understand that your husbands right now are probably in there's anxiety, there's concern about, you know, their jobs, where they're going. These are all real, and they create an immense amount of mental stress. And so it's very important that a woman understand that, especially if she's being provided for generally by that husband. I mean, sometimes both spouses are working, and that's a very different situation. But when the husband is the main provider for the household, it's very important that the woman really help him in that as his partner, and just be a source of solace for him. And because some relationships, you can have, unfortunately, people that are always complaining, or they just goad the person, or they push buttons, you know, as they say in modern parlance, you know. And some spouses, whether it's male or what push to get a certain reaction from the husband or the wife. So, oh, you're just like your mother, or oh, you're just like your father. And then that just sets them off. And so it's very important that we get out of, these are called the games people play. You know, it was a book back in the 60s about that. These kind of, R.D. Laing wrote a book called Knots, you know, about the psychological knots that people get wrapped up in. We have to break these patterns. We're human beings, we're intellectual and spiritual beings, and we have the capacity to break patterns. And this is very important. And I'll just give you one example from my own life to drive this home. Years ago, you know, I had one of my sons was very slow, and it was hard to get him out, and we had karate lessons, you know, and so they had to go, and it was actually Taekwondo, but he was late, and I got upset with him, and I really let him have it, not physically, but, and I looked at him, and I saw myself with one of my own caregivers when I was younger. And I realized that I was doing, it was the tapes of my youth being replayed on him. And I literally drove back home and just told him, we're going to start over. And I did it differently. So I broke that tape. And so these are things that people can do. Very often domestic violence comes out of people who grew up in houses that had domestic violence. And so they're repeating the patterns of the past. And the important thing to note is that if you're a believer, then you have to recognize that mujahada is fighting the impulses of the negative impulses of yourself. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. That if you struggle, this mujahada, if you struggle, God will guide you. But if you're not struggling with yourself, and so if somebody, you know, if you get into a situation, you have to immediately stop yourself, or take some breaths, or just do certain things. The Prophet ﷺ, he would always go to prayer. So that's something you do. If you're feeling really angry, I guarantee you, if you go and do wudu and you pray 2 rakats, it's going to have a major impact on your mental state, and it will subside. But you have to do these things. They're difficult things to do, but they are things that the human being is more than capable of doing, but this is mujahada.
Great. Jazakallah khair. Share another aspect, whether it's like spiritual vacuum or social issues or mental issues, we are not alone as Muslim community that facing these challenges. And it was very moving and inspirational to see that last week the Alliance of Virtue statement of solidarity signed by faith leaders from across the traditions, saying we are united in fighting the coronavirus pandemic, but also united in helping each other. And Ramadan being the month when Muslims showcase empathy and Muslims reach out to others. Would you like to elaborate on how the Prophet ﷺ spent the month of Ramadan in terms of being charitable, not just to people far afield, but actually in their neighborhoods?
Right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, first of all, it's very important to remember that, you know, the world, there's a lot of people on this planet. There's over 7 billion now, and the Muslims have a large portion. We've got about 1/5 of that population, of varying degrees of commitment to the faith. That's undeniable. But there are a lot of Muslims on this planet. Now we're all over. We're in England, we're in Canada, we're in France, we're in Germany, we're in Spain, Italy, America. So Islam is not a geographical designation anymore. The Ummah is a global Ummah. There's over, I think there's close to 50,000 now, 50 million Muslims in Western Europe. There's several million. We're actually finding out with the census now how many Muslims. So it's important that Muslims, the Quran says, Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. You were the best community that came out for humanity. It doesn't say li anfusikum or lil Islam, or no, you're the best community that came forth for humanity. And so it's very important that we remember that this community is a community that serves not just ourselves, but humanity, that we're concerned about humanity. And this has been the hallmark of our faith. When the Irish, the great potato famine in the 1840s in Ireland, it was the Caliph, Abdul-Majid in Turkey, who sent shiploads of aid to Ireland to relieve the Irish people of their suffering. He didn't do that as propaganda because it was actually not to their benefit, because the British did not want that, and they had much stronger interests in having good alliance with England than with Ireland. But they snuck that aid into Ireland to help the Irish people, and there are still places in Ireland where they remember that. So, you know, and also one of the great famines in France in the late 18th century, the Algerians had bumper crops that year, and they sent aid from Algeria to France. So there are times when Muslims were aiding the non-Muslims. Now, unfortunately, it's the opposite very often because of our conditions. But Muslims historically were people that really looked beyond themselves. They were not provincial in that way. They saw themselves as caretakers and stewards of humanity. You know, something in Christian theology they call it oikonomia, you know, the stewardship. It's, you know, the khilafah, you know, being good stewards of the earth and of humanity. So it's very important that Muslims just remember that. And we have many very decent rabbis and very decent Christians and that share many things with us. And then also the great world religions share many of the virtue traditions that we do. And I would say now, particularly with the Hindu crises, it's very important that we can't allow what's happening in India to collectivize Hindus. It's very important, and I'm actually really concerned about this because of some of the things that fanatical Hindus are doing. We, just like we do not want to be demonized by what some of our extremists do to other people, and so we all get collectively associated with those extremists, we cannot do that to the Hindu peoples because many of the Hindus, especially those who understand their religion, are troubled by the riots and by these attacks on Muslims and on their sacred places. So it's very important that we understand that every religion suffers from extremism, but we cannot collectivize people. We have to see people as individuals. You know, every Muslim, you know, what Dr. King said, you know, we want people judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. Well, we also want them judged by the content of their character, not by their sociological label of being a Muslim or a Hindu or a Jain or a Buddhist or whatever you are. That we really cannot collectivize people. All white people are evil because they're Europeans and they colonize the world. All this is so alien to the Islamic tradition. لا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. No soul bears the sins of another soul. Don't collectivize people.
لا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة ادفع بالتي هي أحسن. So Shaykh Hamza Yusuf mentioned how that during this period, when unfortunately in some places people are saying, well, because Ramadan is coming, the Muslims are going to gather together either to pray or to break fast, and as a result coronavirus is going to spread. So when we hear such negative news, it's just bearing in mind that our faith is a faith of mercy, trying to reach out to people to help them understand what our faith teaches us. Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, sometimes when you say words of thanks, they can be superficial, but we are deeply thankful to, first of all, one of the leading scholars of our era, Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah, who's who's truly building bridges between communities, and Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, being the vice president of the Forum for Promoting Peace in Muslim Societies, have done amazing work that will be remembered for decades in terms of how we are building bridges between communities because we are all in it together. So Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, I'd just like to ask you to remember us all in your prayers, and if you could just pray for us that during this month of Ramadan, which is very unforgettable, it's going to be an unforgettable experience, how we return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reconnect with Allah and also our shared humanity.
Yeah, mashallah. You know, these are unprecedented times. As far as I can tell, I don't think ever in human history there has been a situation like this. So people that are young, like yourself, your grandchildren, may Allah give you a long life, they're going to say, you lived through the COVID-19. So these are historical and unprecedented times in human history. And we're all navigating new waters. Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah comes out of a classical Islamic tradition. He's not a modernist. He's somebody who really is rooted in the classical tradition, but he is somebody who believes in tajdeed and believes in ijtihad. But he's not a modernist. He's a traditionalist. And so it's very important to understand that we are obliged by our religion to obey the people in authority, and this is something that's very important, because the negative consequences of not doing that ends up creating much more human suffering. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-mu'minu la yudhillu nafsah," that a believer should not humiliate himself. They asked him, how does he humiliate himself? And he says, يَتَعَرَّضُ لِلْبَلَاءِ مَا لَا يُطِيقُ, to expose themselves to a tribulation or a trial that they can't bear. And Ahmed Zarruq said one of the best examples of that is opposing government, and then the government humiliating and abasing you because of that. So these are important aspects of the religion. I mean, we do have a tradition of truth, speaking the truth to unjust tyrants, and those are very important aspects of the tradition, and that's undeniable. That's the role of the scholars. Ahmed ibn Hanbal said it should be done in private. So those are important. We can't deny that. Being silent in the face of injustice is also can be a crime for some people. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inshallah bless you. Like I said, the Imams online, you guys were ahead of the curve, because now all the Imams are online. But may Allah bless you for your foresight in creating this forum and recognizing the importance now of the global community. We don't have the type of scholarship that we used to have in the numbers that we used to have, but we do have people like Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah, who, as somebody who's been working with him closely for going on more than 25 years, I can attest to just the vastness of his scholastic knowledge, but also the depth of his spiritual training. His father was a great sheikh and a spiritual master as well, Sheikh Mahfoud, Sheikhna Mahfoud. And the sheikh is, he's very humble, like you said, and people sometimes, because he's like that, they don't realize what's in front of him. But I mean, I just call him Ghazali or Zamanihi. He really is the Ghazali of his time. And one of the things that the Arabs say, and the Sufis in particular say this, they say that al-mu'asara, is like contemporaneity, like living at the same time as a person, is a type of hijab. It's something that you're veiled by the people of your time. So people, when Malcolm was alive, it was just, for a lot of people, wasn't a big deal for them. But when you lose those great people, it's the later people who realize who they were. So very often that people living at the same time don't acknowledge that. And that's how I view Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah, is that people really, a lot of people have just missed him completely because they don't understand who he is and what he's trying to do, and the sincerity that is very evident to me and the people who work with him and around him, not to mention the many karamat that we've seen at his hands. And the Arabs say al-qurbu hijab, that being too close to somebody also can veil you from who they are. So, you know, may Allah open our eyes and our inner sights, and may we see the people of our time for who they are and respect them. Our religion is a religion of hierarchy. We believe in the equality before the law. Everybody's equal, should be equal before the law, but we don't believe in this idea somehow that everybody's the same. It's a very dangerous modern concept. Sayyidina Ali said, قِيمَةَ الْمَرْءِ فِي مَا يُحْسِنُهُ. The value of a human being is what they do with ihsan. And هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Are they the same, those who know and those who don't know? And this is why civility can only come about from hierarchy, because when everybody's equal, there's no basis for civility. There's no basis for adab. You say, oh, we treat everybody the same. Well, then you've lost adab, because when you have a hierarchy, you have basically duties. So the duty of an elder is to have compassion on the younger, and the duty of the younger is to have respect for the elder. This is why in your language, now you speak a very nice English, but in your the language of your parents and your ancestors.
I do speak Urdu as well, Shaykh.
I know, but they have a whole way of speaking. If somebody's older, you actually have to put a suffix on the word. You know, like you wouldn't just say Asim, you'd say Asim Bhai, you know, or something like that, to show that respect. Those things are being lost on modern peoples. If you have a white beard, you're supposed to be treated with certain respect just because you've lived that long on the earth. And so the Prophet said, Laysa minna man la yuwaqqir kabirana wa la yarham saghirana. He's not from us the one that doesn't show respect for our elders or compassion for our youth. So this is very important to remember, that we really have to restore in our community a type of recognition, you know, that people, umirtu an unazzila an-nas manazilahum. There's not to belittle people, especially it's not about poverty, because some of the people that deserve the most respect are some of the poorest people in the world. And I've seen them. Some of the greatest scholars that I've ever known in my life were people that lived in huts in West Africa. So it's not about richness and wealth. It's about piety and knowledge. And these are the hallmarks of our faith that the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna hadar Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu, Inna hadar Quran yarfa'u unasan wa yada'u akharin. This book elevates some people and it bases others. It elevates the people of knowledge and it bases the people of ignorance. So knowledge is really something that we have to respect. And the ijtihad of the people of knowledge, we might not understand it because we don't have the scope of their vision or their perspective. And so it's very important to also to have just a good opinion about people, you know, because there are people that attack Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah and they don't understand that he's working on a whole other level in terms of ijtihad. And I was once with him in a car, and I'll end with this. I was once with him in a car, and there was a scholar from his own community who was attacking him online and writing articles, you know, and he said it was troubling him. And there was somebody in the car who said to him, Shaykh, don't worry, he can't harm you, he can't do anything bad. He said, no, I wasn't thinking about myself, I was thinking about him. You know, like he was troubled about him, like that's, you know, that's where he was, you know, spiritually, just attacking other people.
Yeah, that's a true sign of a wali in terms of being caring towards others. And alhamdulillah, I mean, what's amazing, truly inspiring about Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah is that he's a classic jurist, but at the same time, doesn't shy away from tackling the challenges of his time, using the modern phenomena. You know, so today is a real example of how, you know, using technology, Imams online platform brought together in partnership with Peace Forum, with Sandala, and being able to, you know, really communicate with the people that he wants to connect with. So what's truly amazing about Shaykh Abdallah Bin Bayyah is that he he is someone who can very easily connect with a layperson, if I may say so, as well as those who are in positions of leadership, whether it's scholarship or political leadership, and that's why we see that he's really emerged as a true scholar of Islam who's presenting this inner peace as well as the outer peace. That's the essence of Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve Shaykh Abdallah bin Bayyah and help us to learn from the wisdom that he so much of, he distributes and promotes, alhamdulillah. Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, once again, really grateful from the global team, from the UK, from Maghreb, from UAE, as well as the USA. Jazakallah khair. Remember us in your du'as, and especially the global team that has brought us together.
Zishan Zafar, because I know he worked very hard, and Aisha Subhani and the others that worked hard, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Barakallah fikum wa karamakum Allah, inshallah. May Allah increase you, elevate you. May Allah protect you and your loved ones. May Allah protect all those that are watching, inshallah, all of you and your loved ones. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this really the best Ramadan. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it a time that we get close to Allah in these difficult times and circumstances. May Allah bring sakina to the homes of the believers. May Allah protect our women wherever they are. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our children. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, put just love of the Quran back into the hearts of this ummah, not just to recite it, but to actually practice its principles and to live by its dictates. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, give Shahada to all those doctors and nurses that have died in this event. We had a Muslim doctor in Wales that succumbed to the corona. May Allah bless him and his family and give them sakina, inshallah. May Allah, the Prophet said that that there's 7 in a riwayah 5, but in a sahih riwayah there's 7 types of shahada, martyrdom, after the shahada defending your homeland. And one of them, the first one he mentioned, was al-mat'un, the person who dies in an epidemic. And Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani said that the person who dies in an epidemic is exactly the same maqam as it's the only one that shares the same maqam as a person who died defending the homelands of the Muslims. So that's really important to remember, that that these people are shuhada. We still bury them in a normal way, but they're shuhada. They're أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. لا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم. So they're living in a better place. So جزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you to all our panel members as well as the viewers for joining us through this platform, Imams Online, promoting peace, forum for promoting peace, as well as Sandala have brought this to you. Jazakallah khair.